Good afternoon. My name is Linzhen Wang. I teach Chinese literature and film in the Department of East Asian Studies. I'm very pleased to welcome you all of you to today's talk. As always, I'd like to thank Shayna Weinberg, the Yale of China coordinator, and Melina Packer, program coordinator in East Asian Studies, for their great assistance in organizing this whole film events. Today is going to be the last film lecture in this event for the semester. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker. Chengzhou He is Professor of English and Drama and Deputy Director of Institute for Advanced Studies in Social Sciences and Humanities at Nanjing University. He's also the Chinese director for Nanjing Brown. Now it's already center. Here we say Nanjing Brown Joint Program for Gender Studies and the Humanities. He received his PhD from University of Oslo. Is that okay? In Norway. Professor He is a distinguished and widely published scholar in Ibsen studies. He received the Norwegian Ibsen Medal in 2002 and is now the president of the International Ibsen Committee. In spring 2009, he was invited to visit Brown University as distinguished visiting fellow at the Kogut Center. Recently, he has also served as visiting professor at Göttingen University in Germany and Oslo University in Norway. Professor He has an impressive record of publication. His two monographs, Henrik Ibsen and Modern Chinese Drama, published in Oslo in 2004, and the Scandinavian canon, Ibsen, Strindberg, and Hamsun, published by Beijing University Press in 2009, have generated great impact on the study of Ibsen and Scandinavian literature. He also edited many books, including Ibsen and Modern China, Representation of the Other, and Gender, Theory, and Culture. Apart from his many articles in Chinese, he has published a number of English articles in international academic journals, such as, the first one is New Helicon, right? Modern Language Quarterly, Comparative Drama, Ibsen Studies, and Perspectives. And Perspectives Studies of Translatology. That's something new. Over the years, Professor He has also organized a number of important international conferences, such as focusing on women, gender, and Chinese cinema in 2008, reconsidering Orientalism in the Chinese context in 2010, and the 21st century global studies in 2011. Professor He is also the organizer of many theater and performance events in Nanjing University, including in Nanjing in general, including the annual International Ibsen Festival. I just want to add something here. I think recently Professor He has also done enormous research in the area of transgender performance and Chinese cinema. So today he's going to present something on that topic. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor He Chengzhou.
Thank you so much, Linzhen, for your kind introduction. It's always a great pleasure and honor to be back at Brown University. And sometimes I've been called both an insider and outsider of Brown University. Yes, I always have a great pleasure, good time in staying in Brown. And this morning, Linzhen asked me whether I feel tired after 20 hours travel from Nanjing to Brown, and I was not. I got good sleep, so like homecoming, so it's enjoyable stay always. So And today, as Linzhen has just announced, I'm going to talk about performance and the politics of gender with examples about transgender performance in contemporary Chinese cinema. Yeah. So in recent Chinese popular culture, there is a widespread phenomenon of transgender or transsexual performance, especially men cross-dressing into women. When I was preparing this talk, from time to time I was puzzled by some concepts, because when you say cross-dressing in a Western academic context, is different from what we talk about now, impersonation in China. So, but then, although, I'm still using these Western concepts for the sake of convenience, okay? But understandably, very different from its application in China. So, for example, here is called Li Yugang. He's a female impersonator in Chinese opera. Okay, so you have two images. One is the stage photo of Li Yugang impersonating as a woman, and also there, Li Yugang in everyday life. So, and he appears very often in Chinese media, very popular in some different kinds of interviews. And this as a student singer called Liu Zhu from Chengzhou, from southwestern China. He took part in the 2010 Happy Boys Singing Contest. Of course, Happy Boys Singing Contest to be boys, right? So here and then over there on the left top, you'll see Liu Zhu, sometimes appearing in his classroom. But I will come back to it later. So it caused a huge debate about performing, about this kind of transgender performance, in TV programs. And then we have another dancer called Jing Xin. He was a famous ballet dancer in the 1990s. And again, left top, in the 1990s, Jing Xin. But then after a sex change operation, he became now a female dancer, ballet dancer. Also very popular, well-known, because she appeared in many interviews in Chinese media. Well, in addition, transgender performance becomes the subject of some Chinese movies. And here today I talk about 3 examples, okay? The first film which I'll talk about is Mei Lanfang. I was told that yesterday you have a screening, right, of Mei Lanfang here. So, and here you have 2 kind of posters, right? And here is a Mei Lanfang in a stage photo of Mei Lanfang in Peking Opera, also from the film, right, from the movie. And the other side is a actor, also Mei Lanfang, in the male costume, right? So, another one example is Farewell to My Concubine, on which I gave a talk I think 2 years ago here on this campus. And and both Mei Lanfang and Farewell My Concubine were directed by Chen Ke, right, the same director, again, one of the well-known, called 5th generation film directors. And, but then they are obviously very different. Mei Lanfang is about history, right, about biography, right, of Mei Lanfang. or the Farewell My Concubine is fiction. So it's very different in direction. And the third example I use is Hua Mulan. And as you can see from the poster, right, it's Mulan in armor, right? It's a story is based on a Chinese legend of a female warrior, and for the sake of protecting her old sick father from being forced into military service, Mulan disguises herself as a man to join the army, wins many battles, and is promoted to general. Upon returning home from the battlefield, she discloses her female identity and has thereafter been known as a national heroine. So based on the examples of transgender performance in contemporary Chinese cinema, I've thought about quite a few questions, such as why have the stories of cross-dressing or transgender performance been favored by the Chinese film directors recently? Are there differences between the representation of male to female cross-dressing and that of female to male cross-dressing in these movies? How have the different genres of gender impersonation been received, both now among the audience and in different Chinese historical periods? In what ways does this recent phenomenon of transgender performance in movies reflect the discourse and the politics of gender in China today? And lastly, how does the Chinese example of transgender performance help us reflect upon the Western theories of gender performativity as discussed by Judith Butler and other theories? In the following, I think I will discuss first male to female cross-dressing. Now, the male, to discuss the films, Mei Lanfang and the Farewell My Concubine, I need to introduce briefly male Dan in Chinese theater. Female impersonation has a long tradition in Chinese theater, dating back to the 13th century. And then Lu Xun in 1924, Lu Xun is one of the leading Chinese writers. He said, the greatest, most long-lasting, and the most popular art in China is man impersonating women. Kind of quote. As a man performing female roles, he has to observe and study femininity carefully, and then represent the particularities of women on stage in a convincing manner. And Wen Ruhua here, Wen Ruhua, also a well-known Dan actor, and there is a stage picture of Wen Ruhua. And he is often called the last female impersonator in China today, says, quote, the male Dan is not imitating women in a simple way. It is acting women, a recreation of the tenderness, loyalty, courage, and elegance of Chinese women, end of quote. In the West, the art of female impersonation also wins praise from many famous intellectuals, such as the German poet Goethe. In his treatise, Women's Parts Played by Men in a Roman Theater, he gives comments and appreciation of the male transvestite. Here's a quotation. The young man has studied the characteristics of female sex in his essence and bearing. He has learned to know them and to give them life as an artist. He does not portray himself, but a third nature, actually foreign to him. We come to know this nature even better because someone else has observed it, reflected on it, and presented us not with the thing itself, but with the result of the thing, end of quote. In the Peking Opera, female impersonators are required to constantly imagine themselves to be women. A Chinese Dan actor once said, quote, taking my body as a female, I have to transform my heart into that of a female. And then my tender feelings in charming postures can become truthful and lifelike. If a trace of male heart remains, there must be a bit that does not resemble a female, end of quote. And Mei Lanfang also claimed that identification with a female was the highest realm of the art of female impersonation and traditional Chinese performing arts in general. About Mei Lanfang, very briefly. Mei Lanfang is one of the greatest Dan actors in the 20th century, famous for his impersonation of historical Chinese women. And here some stage photos of Mei Lanfang. Here is Mei Lanfang. What happened? Didn't show? I'm sorry. It was turned on. Or what? Okay.
Maybe didn't. Oops, I think I advanced drift. Huh. It's on over there. And the projector just goes to sleep.
It's all connected.
Just connect it and unconnect it, or FN F7 just to wake it up, because it should be sending signal, right? Yeah.
So do we know whether the projector's on? It's on, right?
It's it's
Projector is
green.
Connection.
It's like the it's acting odd. I mean, it's connected in. Maybe if we can. Maybe that's. Wow, they really. Just be able to connect it, unconnect it. Wow, they really weren't joking when they.
Okay, and then just redo it?
Yeah, it should just like wake it up.
Very strange.
Yeah, cycle through the FM thing again. We're going to cycle through the windows. Oops. What's, I don't know, it just,
It says
yeah.
touchpad is different.
Oh, I don't want that. I just wanted to do FN and then for the screen, you know.
For
when you
screen,
type in,
okay.
then, like top it mirrors it.
I think it's the
Go.
control FN and 7.
Yeah, and so
Right.
now you can cycle through. So you want that, which means the mirroring. Or
This
which
is a-
means mirroring.
This is what means the projection.
Yeah.
Okay.
That happens. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, well, I don't know.
Thank you.
刚才有吧
刚才有一直都有，你放的时候都有，就是刚才你讲的时候突然就灭掉了。
？OK，
那有的时候不是它会 sleep 吗？我的状态是那个，这个是什么？
就是那个我的电源，
因为如果重来一次呢？
那一次可以啊，试试看吧。
是对。
我好像刚才还没有。刚才我选的那个选的那个有问题，刚才他让我选的那个是，
Let me make sure that everything.
我来先关了再说吧，是不是试一试看？
对，可以从头再试一下，看看能不能把它。哎，我这个学期也是。It happens to me many times in class.
Okay.
Yeah. Technology sometimes.
Rat's nest. Sorry. There have somebody
Why there's nothing even appear here?
I can deliver the talk without this.
Cannot really.
Well, I can also.
But
This is then less effective.
Probably.
这样怎么闭了？不知道。感觉我应该再弄一下。Can you come? Yeah. I tried this projector. Should be Okay.
What did you do? It's like magic.
Yeah, there's some technician
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. It turned out somebody else in another room hit a switch so that disconnect this thing.
Okay, sorry about it. It's back. Yeah. So I say, Mei Lanfang was famous for his impersonation of some historical Chinese women. And this is one is a concubine, Yang Guifei, is one of the well-known historical person, a concubine of the emperor in Tang Dynasty. And also Mei Lanfang is famous for his promoting Chinese opera abroad. He has been to the former Soviet Union and also to United States. Here's a picture together with Charles Chaplin. He was in the United States in 1930, I think. So, this film, Mei Lanfang, consists of 4 episodes in his life. The first episode, challenging his master, the then largest opera star, Shi Shanyan. And then second episode, his love affair with Meng Xiaodong, who is best for impersonating male characters, and successful performance tour in the United States. And lastly, his patriotism during the anti-Japanese war. Okay, so I would like to play a clip. Okay, in which Mei Lanfang performed together with Meng Xiaodong. So here you see Mei Lanfang performing as a woman, and then Meng Xiaodong, a woman, playing as a man together. So
那会儿刚学戏，一帮子师兄弟儿一块儿给你拍的。
孟小姐好记性。
三哥，
哎，
邱先生吧？
邱如白。
外头都说您是梅大爷的师傅。
哎，不敢。
诸位三哥四弟啊，今儿个雅集，单缺个虚声，哎，可巧小东就来了，能找得了他吗？来吧，小东。怎么样？来段诗街听吧？啊？
今儿我倒是想唱梅楼镇，可就缺个里头景儿。
This is very strange. I played it many times on my computer. Well,
人家非要我们起风。
好人家，待人家，不该学茶这海棠花，牛捏多寻呀，风有酒窝在这朵海棠花。今儿个我是专门来听您唱的，可谁想这不光跟梅兰芳唱了对儿。
Okay, so I show this clip. You know, here you already noticed that it's a Mei Lanfang now in his everyday dress without makeup, as singing as a woman, and then Bong Xiaodong actually is also in her everyday dress. Singing or with gestures, playing as a man. So and then the performance of Dan aroused interesting confusions among the audience. In the eyes of male audience, the Dan is in the eyes of male audience, the Dan is a beauty on whom they project their erotic desire, while for women, the Dan is no doubt a handsome man with great talent and charm. So Mei Lanfang used to be followed by both male and female fans. It was reported that, quote, not only girls, but also 18 years old male spectators would have liked to marry Mei Lanfang, end of quote. Here I would like to argue that the confusion in the audience's reception may have made impact on the Dan actors and their gender imagination. And I have one example from Farewell My Concubine about this how this reception of the audience, okay, the confusion, some the both male and female audience, project their desire on the actor on stage. And that reception also have some feedback on the actor himself. And he himself was confused over his gender identity, which is actually the case with the Chen Diyi in Farewell to My Concubine. Adapted from the namesake novel, the film Farewell My Concubine is about how Chen Diyi, a famous Dan actor, becomes more and more identified with his role as a woman and falls in love with his brother, Sixiong Xiaolou, the player of the king. He swears that he will do exactly what Yu Ji does in the play, being faithful to the husband until death. Meanwhile, Xiaolou takes a liking in and later gets married with a prostitute, Ju Xian, played by leading Chinese actress Gong Li. The complex relationship among the three unfolds amid a succession of social and political upheavals in the 20th century China, including the anti-Japanese war and Chinese Cultural Revolution, during which Ju Xian commits suicide. When they are reunited after the Cultural Revolution, Chen Diyi and Duan Xiaolou perform the play Farewell to My Concubine on empty stage, at the end of which Chen Diyi, the actor, commits suicide with a sword in the same manner as Yu Ji does in the play. I guess here a little bit confusing for some of you who do not know the story, right? So it's the actor, character in the film, Chen Diyi, right? And he does the same as the character in the play, Farewell My Concubine, right? Committing suicide with the sword of the emperor to show loyalty to him. The tragedy of Diyi and as well as Yu Ji seem to have infected the life of Hong Kong actor Leslie Chen, who also committed suicide at the age of 47 by jumping out of the hotel room. One of the major questions about Farewell My Concubine is how does Chen Diyi become a gay? Does gender transformation alone, gender performance alone, affect his gender identification? The movie shows how violence has an impact in the process of these gender trouble. The violence begins with Xiao Douzi's mother. Xiao Douzi is a boy, Chen Diyi, mother chopping his sixth finger at the opera school. And Xiao Douzi suffers from another more violent regulation when a theater agent comes to visit the troupe to select new tenants to play at Eunuch Zhang's birthday party. Eunuch Zhang is he was formerly a servant in the palace, in the royal palace, right? So Xiao Douzi is told to sing the song he always stumbles on. Again, he messes up the same line, "I am by birth a maiden, not a boy." Instead, he recites, "I am by birth a boy, not a maiden." So here, his resistance, the boy Chen Diyi, Xiao Douzi, the resistance to the gender assignment, in the opera, So the line is a important, kind of touchstone, So it's "I am by birth a maiden, not a boy," or "I am by birth a boy, not a maiden," So instead, he cites "I am birth a boy, not a maiden." His failure enrages Shitou, his brother at the school, who picks up a smoking pipe, thrusts into Douzi's mouth, and chews heavily. With blood swarming from his mouth, he recites the song again, this time correct. That means, "I am by birth a maiden, not a boy." The sudden cruel treatment of Shitou results in Xiao Douzi's internal identification with the female role he plays. However, it is in Eunuch Zhang's mansion that Douzi, for the first time, is confronted with the gender he's regulated to identify. After successfully performing Farewell My Concubine at Eunuch Zhang's birthday banquet, Douzi is brought to Zhang's private chamber, and sexually abused by Zhang, which reinforces his subordinate position as a woman. To eunuch Zhang, he's nothing but a whore, which clearly reflection of the massive social oppression imposed on male Dan. Here I also have another clip, short clip.
有点昆腔的地儿没有啊？
学了2处。
男怕夜奔，女怕思凡，就来段思凡吧。
小尼姑年方28，正青春被师傅削去了头发。我本是男儿郎，又不是女娇娥，为何？
那也实在是对不住您呐，实在是对不住。这孩子平常
改日再见，
不是这样的，他挺好。
谁叫你回来了？我叫你错，我叫你错，我叫你错，错！张嘴！张嘴！错！错呀你！叫你错！叫你错！我叫你错！叫你错！错呀你！错！哎！小尼姑年方28，正青春被师傅削去了头发。我本是女娇娥，又不是男儿郎，为何腰系黄绦，身穿直多？见人家夫妻们洒落，一对对着锦穿罗，不由人心急似火，奴把袈裟扯破。
张公公，您寿比南山。
哎呀！ 是老公公特的赏给2位小角儿的，谢上去吧。
这霸王要有这把剑，早就把刘邦给宰了，当上了皇上。哎，那你就是郑姑娘娘了。
师哥
啊，
我准送你这把剑。
哎呦，当心呐！当心！我小爷这可是把真家。慢着您，来了，来了，来了。
呵，
啊，
眉毛这儿汗一遮生疼。
俩孩子一块儿去吧。老规矩了，多少年的老规矩嘞。
关师傅，这您不明白就说不过去了。您说这虞姬她怎么演的，她也得有意思。您说呢？
啊！师傅，小豆子，小豆子。
民国21年。
不对，是大清宣统24年。过来。
我找我师哥，我想撒尿。
就往这里头撒，就往这里头撒。你这样的往里头撒，不算脏的东西。
Okay, so here the script is about the violence that has impact upon Xiao Douzi's gender identity. Well, this has been noted in most research on the film. And what I want to argue is that most critics have failed to see that to represent homosexual as unnatural, but as a result of violence and suffering, is to negate the normalcy of the queer. These episodes of violence perpetuate the definition of female gender in DE as, quote, created by pain and deprivation, maintained by substitutes, satisfactions, end of quote. To denaturalize the queer is, I think, to degrade it. So queering the queer queering the queer is problematic in this film, Farewell. And next, I want to discuss an example of female-to-male cross-dressing, Hua Mulan. This Chinese poem, The Ballad of Hua Mulan, Mulan Ci, is the original source for the film adaptation. It was first written in the 6th century. It tells the story about a young woman who takes her father's place in the army, disguised as a man. I've already told the story a little bit in the beginning. And then I come to the ending of this poem, which reads like this. Traveling together for 12 years, they didn't know Mulan was a girl. The he-hare's feet go hop and skip. The she-hare's eyes are mothered and feathered. Two hares running side by side, close to the ground. How can they tell if I am he or she? So that's actually a comment from the anonymous poet, right, about Mulan serving in the army for may not be 12 years. In Chinese, 12 may refer to many years, okay, without being discovered as a woman. So it is implied here that gender is not a natural fact, but a social construct. Mulan is both a warrior and a woman, not one or the other. As an example of the unwomanly woman, Hua Mulan has often been compared in China to Saint John in the West. Over the centuries, the story of Hua Mulan has been rewritten and adapted into different forms and genres. In the United States, Maxine Hong Kingston makes a different interpretation of Mulan in the American cultural context in her famous novel called The Woman Warrior from 1975. I will not go into the details of this novel, how Maxine Hong Kingston appropriates the story of Mulan in the US context. But then I refer to 1998 Disney animation, which popularized a cartoon, which popularized the legend of Mulan in the United States and beyond. Although it was a commercialized children's version, the intermediate adaptation helped to bring the legend of Mulan to a much broader international audience. One important change in the Disney film is a swimming scene in which Mulan's female identity is in danger of being discovered. Later on, the doctor finds out Mulan was a girl, was a woman. Likewise, interestingly, in the 2009 Chinese film, Hua Mulan, there is also a swimming scene. Mulan's female identity in the army is discovered by the then low-rank commander called Wen Tai, with whom Mulan later falls into love. I want to show very briefly these two scenes in these two respective films. The Chinese film, Hua Mulan.
你是哪个营的？啊？问你。
This this Wen-tai called. He says women.
你是女人。
小虎。
Okay, so we don't have time to watch more of it. So after the swimming scene, you know, and then somebody has lost his kind of jade, and then everybody has to take off his clothes, and then so there are lots of stories around his gender issue of Mulan. So what is interesting for me is, you know, as you are just being discussed in the Chinese poem, right? As a traveling for 12 years, nobody knows Mulan was a girl, right? But in this both Disney animation and Chinese film, the Mulan's female identity was discovered very early on. Now, through the invention of swimming scenes and exposure of her female identity early on in the movies, it is made sure that Mulan's cross-dressing does not provide scenes of misguided desire. In the eyes of Wen-tai, for example, I mean the low-rank commander, which had the bath together in the river, together with Mulan, fighting together with Mulan. So Mulan's femininity is constantly recognized. The male gaze of Wen-tai is representative of the audiences who watch the film. The representation of Mulan's body that is feminized and sexualized reveals the importance of eroticism to the appeal in the film. The 2009 Chinese film Hua Mulan reveals a different but consistent attitude towards female-to-male impersonation. In the Chinese history, stories of female cross-dressing often refer to the women's need of self-protection in situations of emergency. Their desire for a more outdoor or exciting lifestyle, or the necessity to take part in war and revolutionary activities. Generally speaking, female-to-male cross-dressing has been well accepted in China, as opposed to male-to-female cross-dressing. Supposedly, this has something to do with the fact that female-to-male cross-dressing was usually perceived as dressing up, as an upgrading in social status, in contrast with the male-to-female cross-dressing. It is assumed that women in male disguise is not particularly threatening. As is often the case, female-to-male cross-dressing is represented as just a temporary transgression of the boundaries of the other, which will finally be corrected so as not to entail any real subversion of male power. In the different remakes of Hua Mulan, she always reappears as a woman in the end. Taking the three films as a whole, I want to ask, how does the transgender performance contribute to our understanding of gender and sexuality? To be more specific, does the transgender performance support the gender patriarchy and heterosexism, or rather challenge it? In my opinion, the films reveal the complexity and nuanced ambivalence in conceptualizing gender. First, the transgender performance proves again that gender is performative. As Judith Butler calls it, the stylized repetition of gendered norms. Second, the transgender performance are to some extent parodic and subversive. The image of Hua Mulan has constantly reminded its audiences that the social role model divided between the male and the female is arbitrary. However, the transgender performance at the same time also re-idealizes the hegemonic binary system and buttresses the status quo as much as subverted. This is similar with what Judith Butler discusses about the film, such as Paris is Burning, in her book, Bodies That Matter, from 1993. According to Butler, it is much too simplistic to pose drag performances as either subversive or reaffirming of dominant cultural models of gender and sexuality. She thinks the heterosexual culture produces form of drag for itself. The films are functional in providing a ritualistic release for a heterosexual economy that must constantly police its own boundaries against the invasion of queerness, and that this displaced production and resolution of homosexual panic actually fortifies the heterosexual regime in its self-perpetuating task, above is a quote. Similarly, the transgender performance in the Chinese film does not end up challenging or subverting heterosexism and the gender patriarchy, but rather consolidates their normacy among the viewers. In Farewell, My Concubine, when Dee accepts his identity as an inferior woman, she falls victim to patriarchal ideology. Like Yu Ji, a symbol of obedient woman who belittles her own life to affirm her subordinate position to Master King Chu, Dee is ready to accept a subordinate position to Xiaolou, the player of Master King. For one example, when he sees his name in front of Xiaolou's on the theater bulletin, although he's more famous than Duan Xiaolou, he gets very angry and says, how can the concubine's name appear before the Master King? In addition, like a traditional woman, Dee remains loyal to Xiaolou all his life, and even dies in his arms. In his transgender fantasy, Dee does not liberate himself, but rather falls prey to male patriarchy. Then, unlike Chen Diyi in Farewell, Mei Lanfang is well known for his images of unsurpassable femininity that he has embodied on stage, and for the display of extraordinary masculine demeanor off stage. One example is about his personal courage during the anti-Japanese war. He was asked by the Japanese army to perform, but Mei Lanfang refused to sing, and therefore endured an impoverished lifestyle. Once an enraged Japanese army officer humiliated him, saying, "You are but a presumptuous woman on stage." And Mei Lanfang's immediate reply, "Off stage I'm a man," is well known and widely praised among the audiences. While hiding in Hong Kong in 1942, he even wore mustache, which made any performance as a Dan impossible on stage. His patriotism further boosted his fame as a great artist. In my last part, I want to briefly discuss how the issue of impersonation is closely related to Chinese Revolution since the beginning of the 20th century. In the 1920s, Lu Xun, who I mentioned, the leading intellectual and writer at the time, unleashed a fierce attack on Mei Lanfang and the art of impersonation in Peking Opera. In his article discussing Mei Lanfang's art, Lu Xun says, quote, "Rather than watching a ghostly fairy or sister," at this time is Lin Daiyu, impersonated by Mei Lanfang, "most audiences would like to see a beautiful country girl because she is closer to us," end of quote. It is obvious that Lu Xun was at that time prejudiced towards the high culture, art, and art of Peking Opera. Then why was Lu Xun so critical towards Mei Lanfang and the female impersonation? One explanation is that Lu Xun, as well as other radicals tended to draw some figurative association between the act of female impersonation and the abnormality of Chinese culture at the time, which is blamed for having caused the backwardness of China and its distorted national character in the 1920s and 30s. In his article, Impersonating China, Wang Dewey has this to say, quote, "Lu Xun, above all, is worrying about the masculinity of the Chinese national character. He shares with contemporary intelligentsia a yearning for a strong Chinese figure, as opposed to China's old, emancipated, feminine image," end of quote. Lu Xun's criticism is representative of the nationalistic sentiment of many Chinese at the time, due to which female impersonation is vilified for the sake of social criticism. Then Hua Mulan, as the opposite of Chen Diyi and other female impersonators, is represented as brave and loyal to the emperor. Hua Mulan commands his army to defend the motherland. At one point, Hua Mulan vows in front of the army, quote, "The soldiers can betray me, the generals can abandon me, but I will never give away my motherland," end of quote. She frequently calls upon her fellow soldiers not to forget their duties to the country. In the film, Mulan is shown to be not simply a brave fighter, but also a wise commander. And she manages to persuade the the minority princes to collaborate with her in killing the Rouran king, so that the countries of Rouran and Wei country gain peace through the marriage between the Han prince and the Rouran princess. So Mulan has done all she can for the country, including sacrificing her love. So the image of Mulan has been central to the national discourse of unity and stability, as well as to the Confucian discourse of loyalty and fidelity. And this explains her everlasting popularity in China till today. I have a very brief conclusion. The transgender performance as represented in the 3 Chinese films reveals complexity in the relationship between gender or sexuality, performance, and social norms. On the one hand, the transgender performance shows that gender identities are not stable and natural, but performatively constructed. On the other hand, gender norms cannot be easily subverted, but are often re-idealized. In addition, border crossing in gender and performance is highly dependent on locality in time and space. Transgender performance is not fully comprehensible without taking into consideration the historical and social specificities, especially the history of Chinese Revolution in the 20th century. To sum up, the transgender performance in the contemporary cinema and popular culture has brought about fresh reflections on gender, sexuality, and cultural politics, as well as a new mechanism of Chinese industry, film industry, and popular culture in the age of globalization and the market economy. Thank you. This is the actress for Hua Mulan. Yeah. Now, please.
Thank you very much, Chengzhou, for another fascinating talk. I don't quite understand the relationship between, on the one hand, what you said at the beginning about the impersonation of female being the highest form of art. On the other hand, the scene, for example, in Concubine,
Farewell My Concubine.
where being female is subordinate and a production of violence. So how do those two things work in Chinese cultural history? How do they work together?
well, a lot to talk about the history of Chinese opera, Chinese theater. So on the one hand, to impersonate a man, a woman on stage is highly respected, So so Mei Lanfang enjoyed a great popularity, So this is a great art, in the Chinese opera tradition. But on the other hand, opera actors, especially I mean these female impersonators, they were looked down upon in their everyday life. So in general, actors had a very low social status, So if in the ancient China, they say there were 9 classes, 9 classes. But then actors, performers, they were at the bottom. Okay, so it is not strange, that female impersonators were sexually abused. And if you read books about Peking Opera, its history, it was only from the 1920s and 30s when Mei Lanfang and some of his, colleagues, that we, so to speak, the most well-known female impersonators. In this period, female impersonators had a higher, social reputation. But even with Mei Lanfang, in the film, in Mei Lanfang, at that time, several will say it's a common practice that the young boys trained to be female impersonators, they had to work part-time as someone as in the restaurants, to persuade other rich or not very rich, the customers, for more drinking. So in this, and many theaters or schools depended on this income. That these boys had to perform as women, as young girls, to entertain the male customers. So you have this, this violence, the sexual abuse, being sexually abused is part of the, I would say for many, it's a part of their, life. And Farewell My Concubine is showed this part of the story.
So this is interesting. So, at any point, did a male actor choose to be a female impersonator, or was it always a coercion?
Well, since the actors or female impersonators had such a low social status, usually there's poor boys, poor kids from, the parents had no money, and also with, Farewell to My Concubine, right? The mother was a prostitute, right? And then she raised xiaodous in the browser, until the moment that it was impossible for a big boy to live in the browser, right? So then she had to send him to a school for learning opera, right? So it's usually kids from very poor family background.
So that was
Yeah,
common.
that was most common. Yeah. Yeah, please.
In Forever Enthralled, there's the scene with the one fan who is so confused about their own gender from watching Mei Lanfang that he shows up with a gun and is ultimately killed. So there's that example, and then as well, both Mei Lanfang and Bawang Bieji, I think was her name, they love each other, but they are two people who also bend gender norms and end up separate and unhappy in that regard. So it seems to me
well, you refer to Mei Lanfang and Meng Xiaodong, right? And there have been many stories, about what happened to Mei Lanfang and Meng Xiaodong. And in the movie, right? Okay, it's also a kind of a popular interest in the story of Mei Lanfang's private life, right? So it then becomes one important episode in the film, in the movie, Mei Lanfang. And then, well, the tragedy with Mei Lanfang and Meng Xiaodong was not caused by the fact that the cross-dressed, did not abide by the sexual norms. Well, as I think I mentioned that Mei Lanfang was praised for his courage, right? He was very much admired, for resisting, the Japanese, right, to perform on stage. And Mei Lanfang, for Mei Lanfang, or in this film, right, there's no confusion with the onstage impersonation in his private life. He separated very well the stage life and his private life. He lived a very normal male life. He was married, right? He fell in love with Meng Xiaodong, etc. So there's no confusion with Mei Lanfang. Actually, in Peking Opera Theater, it was a taboo, right? It was taboo for female impersonators to get confused with their gender identity, right? So it's a clear division between stage and everyday life. The tragedy of Mei Lanfang in the Meng Xiaodong's love story is not caused by any anything like not abiding by gender norms. Yeah.
The fan who was killed, his tragedy is that he can't separate stage and reality.
You refer to the guy who killed himself, right? He was very generous. He envied, right? He envied Meng Xiaodong. He was a fan of Mei Lanfang, right? and he was so that's one example about about how this female impersonation on stage can cause kind of confusion among the audience, right? So the guy, definitely one of the fans of Mei Lanfang, when he fell in love with Mei Lanfang, he wanted to possess Mei Lanfang, right? But so when Meng Xiaodong, the rumor went out that Meng Xiaodong was in love with Mei Lanfang, he could not just, bear it, right? He wanted to make some trouble, right? And then he ended up killing himself. So it's a trouble with the fan of female impersonation, right? So what I find most interesting when I talk about Farewell My Concubine, I sometimes use an image from the movie. That is when Chen Diyi, right, the female impersonator, when she appeared on stage after the performance, right? You have, and then he was praised, right? He was applauded by the whole house, okay? And then I noticed one interesting combination in the auditorium, right? You have in that movie, in that particular scene, you have the male gaze. That's the Yuan, the man called Yuan, and he was staring at Chen Diyi on stage, a kind of male desire for this female image of Chen Diyi on stage. At the same time, in the same picture, on the second floor is a man, Yuan, staring at, gazing at Mei Lanfang, gazing at Chen Ji, right? And then on the ground floor, right, just in front of the stage, the big crowd of women, right, shouting for Mei Lanfang, throwing their rings, golden rings, and wreaths onto the stage. They were crazy. So in a way, here you see an interesting image. Both men and women were crazy about this female impersonation of Chen Ji. So you see, and then how this, this confusion of gender, affect, the actor or actor himself in his gender identity, which I find interesting to discuss in my papers. Yeah. Please, firstly.
So you talked about how sort of the mark of a successful female impersonator was sort of portray the beauty and tenderness and loyalty of like a female. Was it also a goal or a mark of success to incite this sort of like male gaze or desire, or was that just something sort of separate? Because I would associate that with kind of inciting that male desire as something that would lead to this violence and this sort of sexual abuse. Was that also a goal of a successful female impersonator?
To appear to male gaze is what is fundamental to the art of female impersonation, right? To be a successful female impersonator, okay? One of the you have to attract the male gaze, male gaze. It's part of the art of female impersonation. But I'm not quite sure about your question. You say what is the problem with that?
Oh, it was just because I was just wondering if they were sort of doomed from the start to this sort of like structural violence almost. If the goal is to incite this sort of male gaze, like sort of a dominating force,
right?
And it can lead to like these sexual abuse encounters. If there's, I was just thinking if that is just inherent in the.
All right. So I think that's relevant to my major argument. That is, it's different. This impersonation is fundamentally different from cross-dressing, right, or drag. So maybe for cross-dressing, you have a kind of understanding that to cross-dress is to make gender norms kind of arbitrary, right? Or to parody, the gender norms, right? But then this kind of impersonation or on stage in Chinese theater is not intended to parody the gender norms, so it is not a subversion of the gender norms. In a way, it re-idealizes to support the gender norms. Okay. So now, I think the overall structure for impersonation is in a way very different from what happens to cross-dressing or drag, as in the Western context. So that's why I was hesitant to use cross-dressing to refer to Chinese impersonation on stage. But then I still keep using that. But then in the beginning, I would explain the differences, in cross-dressing and impersonation. So impersonation is to in a way support, the gender structure. Yeah. Please.
Well, just you were talking about how these performers were supposed to keep their private life as a man separate from their stage life as a woman. But I think at the beginning, when you're talking about the different performers, there was that one ballet dancer who had a sex change operation. And so how is that perceived? I mean, what do people think of that?
You mean very beginning, right?
Yeah.
The transsexual dancer.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So well, I would think, regarding transsexual performance, like, the one Jingxing, the one I had a picture of, here. And, well, generally speaking, he has been, or now she has been received, positively received, right? but there are still many stories about Jingxing being prejudiced, okay? Like in some interviews, in interviews that Jingxing had, and then the problem is that people would not ask her about her art, right? They were always curious about her gender issue, right? Ignoring her dancing performance, right? So she was from time to time annoyed, right? By the always talking about her gender issue. For her, he want to step further, right? To disregard that issue, and also, there's from time to time in some media interview, Jingxing complained that she used to serve as a judge in many different national or local dancing competitions, right? And then she realized, some of the events do not invite her any longer, right? And then sometimes the pretense or is that they want some different new faces among the committee. But then also there's a big possibility that because she is a transsexual, so that people were organized and a little afraid of inviting her to act as a judge. So it's, I would say, in general, there is kind of tolerance with transsexual performance, But on the other hand, there's still in some people who are very much hostile towards this practice.
Is there a transgender community outside opera that is in 21st century China?
Mm-hmm.
And how are these people accepted? Not like the dancer, but just let's say the cross-dressers.
Well, one example which I used is Liu Zhu, right? He took part in the national Happy Boy Singing Contest, right? So that's a transgender performance, right? A typical example of that, right?
Yeah, that still could be considered art.
That's not opera, right? That's not opera. Right. Okay. So then so in Chinese TV, so I had another, because Ning, right, was a TV scholar. So I have been following quite a few programs in which transgender performance from time to time appears. Okay. Like in a very very hot program called 星光大道. 星光大道, The Way to Be the Star, right? A very popular CCTV program, 星光大道, amateurs, performers,
it's not censored.
It's a very popular CCTV. It's a national TV program, right? In that
program,
from time to time, of course, it's a stage that everyone can apply to perform there, right? To make a show, So then there'll be a weekly star, and then there'll be a monthly star, and then there'll be a star of the season, So you see different kinds of competitions. Like every I think it's Monday night. Every Monday night, then you have 3 competitors. Then one, maybe more, 5 competitors, then 2 that can move on to the final to the next stage, like this. Very popular program. But then from time to time, you have you have this kind of cross-dressing performance. And then very popular. You get, and I think sometimes I just happen to turn on the TV, Monday evening. I saw, well, again, it's a cross-dressing guy, performing, singing, and then so I think 2 weeks ago there's a boy who different songs, singing different songs, and one song a very masculine performance, and then next piece is very cross-dressing as a woman, and then singing like a woman, a very beautiful voice. So this has been popular, also with audience. I think it's on CCT national TV program. I don't think there was of course there's no censor of this. Yeah, no. Please. I think the gentleman, please. Yeah.
Since you started on that,
right.
The TV show you're trying. Can you just say a little bit more about what do you think it signifies that it's popular on TV now in China, given the current context in China?
Well, and it has been an issue, So some people support it, but the popular culture, it's welcomed by the young people. Otherwise, you cannot move on to the next stage. It will be censored by, So it means it's popular with the audience, right? So then another relevant to this issue is I conducted a kind of survey with students, university students, like in my university, right? And I went like a question like, do you notice that, among your classmates or among the students on campus, are there some people who cross-dressed, okay? And what's your attitude towards it, okay? So this kind of survey on campus. So and I get many interesting answers, okay? Of course, very diverse, but then many will say the phenomenon is, there are quite few who cross-dress on campus. Publicly, going to classroom, Liu Zhu, and the guy, the singer, Liu Zhu, he appeared in his classroom very often as cross-dressing. So that means there's a considerable tolerance in regard to cross-dressing in classroom, on campus, right? So, but then it does not mean cross-dressing has no problem at all, right? So then I did one case study with Liu Zhu. Here I just will use one picture, but Liu Zhu is one of my topic for study. Why? Because, interesting about Liu Zhu is that, he got very strong support of the fans, right? Also through internet, right? You vote for the singer, right? Very popular. But then there was also rumors that the Ministry of Culture was not so happy with this, with this popularity, right? So then there were rumors, and then I was very I paid great attention to what happened, to Liu Zhu, because it's ongoing, right? And he got strong support locally, and then he got strong support from viewers, far away. So what happened to him, right? Then the rumors that the judges got the message that people, some authorities in Ministry of Culture, were not so happy about it, and then Liu Zhu did not move on. He stopped in the Sichuan, in the provincial, stage, but contest, right? So then there could be many different reasons, but then, but so it comes back to actually one of my major topics in the paper is how female to male cross-dressing is different from male to female cross-dressing. people view these two different kinds, genres of cross-dressing very differently, you know, and why? And why has been such kind of, you know, different responses, you know, to female to male and male to female, right? And are there some historical reasons? So that's why I come to Chinese theater. I say in Chinese theater, you have this tradition of male to female, right? But at the same time, you also have, here I did not show it, you know, there's also female to male cross-dressing or impersonation on stage, like Yue opera from Hangzhou, from southern to Shanghai, or in the Shanghai, big Shanghai region, right, area. Actually, Yue opera has been very popular, but Yue opera survives Chinese Cultural Revolution. So nowadays, you know, male to female impersonation almost died out. But then female to male impersonation on stage thrives. Yue opera has been very popular. And why is that? And then another interesting thing is that, you know, how this tradition of female impersonation affect the performing style today. I sometimes, you know, went to theater with colleagues, like in Kun Opera or Peking Opera, right? So I find it very interesting. I wouldn't say funny that, you know, because the masters, you know, the teachers, the masters who teach those women to perform in Peking Opera, right? Used to be now no impersonation. Now it's only women playing women, right? But their masters were female impersonators. So they teach the women how to play a woman on stage. You see what I mean? So it's the female the performing tradition of female impersonation has been taught as part of the performance today for Peking Opera. So you can see how now it's women performing women on stage, using the kind of style that female impersonation has used. So I found that very interesting to observe. You know, so it's a whole lot of issues are connected here. Right? Okay, please, gentlemen.
Transgender performance can be found all throughout East Asia, such as Kabuki theater in Japan. And I was wondering if theater such as Chinese opera, if people in China view Chinese opera and other transgender performance, traditional transgender performance, as exhibiting a Chineseness that comes out through the performance more than the idealized man and woman, a Chineseness that comes out, especially in comparison to other transgender performances in East Asia.
Right. Thank you for this good question. And I worked together with Yue Opera Theater in Hangzhou, who did two performances of Ibsen. One is Cat Gobbler, the other is Native from the Sea. So I worked with them for quite a few years. Right? And then and recently we had a kind of colloquium in Shanghai Theater Academy, gathering, you know, scholars and and then directors, you know, and performers, you know, of Yue Opera. And then and then we, in a way, I suggested, you know, so to promote, you know, because they are being invited to abroad very often, you know, like Yue Opera Head Gobbler has toured many countries, France, Germany, Norway, India. You know, I went to India, to New Delhi with the theater, you know, to there. So now they are planning a bigger, larger project of touring the world, you know, with Yue Opera performances. And then how to, now what is the catching, you know, catching point, you know, to advertise this Yue Opera performance. And then they say, why not, you know, say, you know, male impersonation. Now, female to male impersonation, you know, to highlight this issue. Okay, so it's女扮男装, right? And then to highlight issue when touring abroad. So now this is what refers back to your question, you know, to treat, you know, this impersonation as typical Chinese, to advertise on the Chineseness of Yue or Peking Opera as well. Okay, so now this, which is different from cross-dressing, right? Cross-dressing in the popular culture, right, is different, you know. So to market, you know, in a way, I would say to market impersonation, not cross-dressing. To market impersonation is a cultural strategy that has been adopted by various Chinese theaters, including Peking Opera and Yue Opera houses in China.
Thank you very much for.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your attention.
Students have asked excellent questions.
All right.
You